Hello and welcome. Today I'll be doing a simple topic. Simple in the sense that it won't be too long a discussion, but a lot of times I've heard and seen a very interesting confusion between Hinduism and Buddhism, as well as a misunderstanding of Nirvana being within Hinduism, and vice versa of Atman being within Buddhism. That is not the case. First and foremost, these soteriological concepts are exclusive, and even the Buddha has explained or expressed his opinion as to why it is in fact impossible for Atman to exist within his teachings of Buddhism. Now, of course, the most fundamental difference between Hinduism and Buddhism is that Buddhism is not necessarily a religion in the most traditional sense, whereas Hinduism has gods that are worshipped, such as Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, amongst others. The Buddha is not considered a god and is not supposed to be worshipped like a god by Buddhists, but rather he is considered a teacher, the first teacher, and the only one of, if not the only, last I checked, to obtain Nirvana, which is the peak of and the end goal of Buddhahood, himself. But into the more important part and title of the video. What is the difference between Nirvana and Atman, between Hinduism and Buddhism's peak of being in quotation marks, mind you? Atman is essentially Hindu. Let's get that clear. Atman is related to Hinduism and is an idea of an absolute self or an essence of self that persists through reincarnations. These reincarnations are not the same as the ones of samsara within Buddhism, but they do have reincarnations nonetheless. Atman is the idea that there's this absolute essence of self that exists throughout all of these said reincarnations. Additionally, Atman is transcendental, of course, similar to Nirvana, but Atman is not described in the same way. In terms of etymology, Atman is breath. Nirvana is a extinguishing, but we can get into that in a little bit. Nirvana is different from Atman because it is not the idea of a permanent, unchanging self that is reached through self-knowledge. It is the idea of a constantly changing self and of surpassing our attachments. Now, I'm not so much familiar with Atman right now, but I can tell you about Nirvana. The idea of letting go of our attachments to these things called skandha. I might be butchering it, but skandhas, also called khandhas, skandhas, are sort of aggregates or collections of clingings. The 5 of them are of material image, sensations such as feelings, perceptions, mental activities, and the influences of a previous life, sanskara, if I remember correctly, and vijnana, or consciousness. Now, in the Theravada tradition, Sorry for butchering these names. Suffering arises when one identifies or like when one not identifies with, what's the phrase I believe would be most accurate is act has a proclivity toward one of these um uh collections, one of these aggregates, clusters, for lack of a better word. And the idea of nirvana is to relinquish relinquish all attachments to these. Now, there are further levels beyond this in order to obtain nirvana, but that's a whole other story. And I am not exactly a theologist, or is it theologian? Either way, the fact that I don't know the answer proves my point. Another primary difference of Hinduism and Buddhism, as well as Nirvana and Atman by default, the idea of Hinduism has a very clear creator as well as an ultimate reality that Atman goes to, and after it stops reincarnating, it goes to Brahman, the ultimate reality. Nirvana is different because there is no ultimate creator or Ishvara per se, and rather it is also a lifestyle as well, not necessarily a religion in the sense of worship. Like I said, Buddha is not a god, but rather a teacher. And how you obtain nirvana, well, one key part of it is the Eightfold Path. Now, the Eightfold Path is 8 practices, with those being right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right speech, I want to say, right resolve, right conduct, right view, and right samadhi. Now, I could get into samadhi, but that's sort of a whole other thing and is related to meditation. And like I said, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily like the main guy or the expert. I'm more so providing a synopsis or a brief explanation. To reiterate, nirvana is a Buddhism concept, and Atman is a Hindu concept. The reason they are different / are mutually exclusive is because of the fact that in Atman, one is an absolute self or the essence of the self. Whereas Buddhism teaches that there is no absolute self, but rather the skandha, which are 5 constantly changing aspects of your being. And like I said, they are impression, your feelings, perception, mental activities, and influences from your past lives, samskara, and your consciousness. And suffering is sort of finds its origination from the proclivity to one of these 5 aspects, if you will, and that this suffering is extinguished and this pain is ended by relinquishing the attachments to said aspects. And that's different in the sense that it still remains, you just aren't attached to it anymore per se. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Ironic to do this around Christmas time. Maybe it's not, because it helps better explain other religions and beliefs besides from the mainstream Western views. But yeah, happy holidays.